Hey now, everybody, it is Drac from DDO Players, and I am privileged to be here this evening talking to our senior producer for Dungeons and Dragons Online. It is Tolero.
Hello.
How are you tonight? And thank you for taking some time out of your night to sit down and chat with me for a little bit.
Yeah, happy to chat. Having fun.
Did you survive all your snow? Because I know you're in the middle of a
Yes.
snowmageddon, as it were.
Bit of a snowmageddon here, but it's reasonable levels of snow pile, as long as the snow pile is only as tall as me and not double as tall as me.
There you go. There you go. So we're not, I just thought nothing big is happening, so this would be a good time to talk to you because, there's nothing really going on. No, I kid. Of course, we're at the 20th anniversary, and that started yesterday. So, first of all, congratulations for 20 years. That is amazing for
Thank you.
MMO to hit 20.
Congratulations to all of us,
And
because we only get to this with all of you.
indeed, indeed. So, 20 years. So, I said that's kind of a lifetime for an MMO. What is the one thing about DDO in 2026 that you think the 26 launch team would just go, wow?
It'll sound silly, but it would honestly be the mounts and the cloaks, especially the mounts. Back in the day, long, long ago, there were two different pieces of it. One was they were like, oh, this game is like, you're always in and out of a dungeon. So where would you ride your horse? It's like the traditional D&D problem of, horses are in the rules, but then you go on a quest and you end up always having to tie them somewhere or leave them outside, and then inevitably they either escape or something eats
Right.
them or
Yep.
whatever.
Yep.
And then the second thing was just the technological parts of it. When they had tried to cost out how much effort they thought it would be to make them, it always came back as just too big to do. And so here we are years later, and we figured out a way to do it. And I think that they would just be like, "Wow, why didn't I think of that?"
Yeah. I know. I was shocked when they were first announced because I thought the same thing too. I'm like, where are you going to ride this at? But
Uh-huh.
it's like I ride it everywhere now, though. So it's
And
like
you write it
I get
everywhere
it.
now,
Yeah, I get
exactly.
it. Because
Yep.
I'm like it made sense to me in other games, but this I'm like,
Yeah.
like what? Why would we need these? And now I'm like, I'm glad we have these now. I wish we always had these. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Uh,
always notice that if I'm off my horse and I'm trying to like walk somewhere, I just feel like so
yep.
slow. Even when you have like a really good run speed, it's just like, oh, it's not on my
Right,
horse.
it's like you're kind of in molasses, and you're like, why is this so? Oh yeah, my horse.
My horse.
In the producer's letter, you had talked about wanting to celebrate a generation of players. So, do you have any plans for maybe some like what I'm going to call legacy rewards? That is specifically to recognize those players that have, say, been here from day one or early on, not exactly day one, but just early on in the game's lifetime.
We're still talking through how we want to approach that this year. We do have other activities planned throughout the year, player parties and such. And so we're currently assessing what do we want to do and how do we want to do it. In some cases, there's a little bit of a break in continuity for us because we changed companies a couple of times over the
Right.
years. And it's making sure can we actually tell who is and isn't, and then how do we want to handle people who have technically been here but maybe they had like lapses. Do we still want to give them credit, or do we just want it to be about the people that like never ever and so that's the kind of stuff we're talking through. We didn't think we would have those conversations all polished by the time the actual
Right.
birthday day came. So we're still assessing.
But well, I mean that has to be a nightmare too, like you said, just the technical part of it. It's like, okay, who technically counts, or if somebody was
Yep.
there for like 5 years and then maybe took a break and then came back, but has been there for the rest of the time. So yeah, I I
Yeah.
ca- I can imagine the conversations that go along with some of that. Okay, we're gonna get to the hard question now.
All right.
The anniversary awards. Those got some mixed feedback on the newer version of that Raiders award box that's out. There was some items that were in there that got removed, and then you replaced some stuff. So, what was the thought process behind all that, and how do you how did you guys take the feedback that you got? Because some of it was, a little harsh.
Sure. So one of the things we were looking at with the Raiders Reward Box, especially because we had already done two prior flavors of Raiders Reward Box. We had the
Right.
10-year box and then we had the Draconic box. And so we were like, okay, what haven't we given? Because it would feel kind of stale to just give everybody the exact same choices that they had in the prior two boxes. But then, as we looked at what to put in the new box, we had to work around various technical pieces of it. We're like, okay, what about this item? Oh, no, wait, we can't do that item because the system doesn't understand the upgrade parts of it. And then also, if we give you just the bottom part of it, how would you actually upgrade yourself? Okay, so that one's out. Okay,
Right.
what about this one? Oh, shoot, this one trades for this other thing, and if we do that, then you get infinite of, okay, so we can't do that either. Okay, what about this? Well, but if we do that, then we won't have a hand wrap for anybody. And so it was just a lot of these sort of working through, you're sort of in a room and you're painting and you're like, oh man, now we're in the corner because there's only so much
Right.
place to go here. We wanted to have
W-
the box try to give you a shot at things that were more contemporary, things that had come out after the 10-year, especially. But then we were like, oh, but there's some really classic items that people are going to miss if it's not in there because they're sort of super iconic. So maybe we should include them. And then other things we looked at was items that have very specific, unique appearances that are hard to get off of treasure elsewhere. And we
Okay.
know some people might want to glamour those. And so, in places where we had to trade out stuff because of technical problems, we were like, okay, if you pull in this, and this has a cool appearance that you really can't get anywhere else, it's the only one that looks that way. And so that was sort of the logic train we were walking down. And then feedback wise, it was a matter of looking at the balance of, okay, what can we get people that are at the top? It's going to be very difficult for them because during the birthday, there's going to be a ton of, remember, the Raiders Reward Box, it's kind of meant for non-Raiders because it's for all those people that
Right.
didn't manage to get the cool stuff
Like me.
that
Yeah.
you
That's.
get from
Yeah.
playing all the time.
Yeah.
Like, if you have terrible luck, then this box is for you. And, statistically, there's going to be a ton of people that aren't the lucky people that got
Right.
every single thing.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, well, what else can we give people that let the high end folks be happier? And so we ultimately decided, okay, what if we try to handle that element in a different part of the celebration? So that's when we started looking at more like, what can the mimic give? Sterling the mimic, can he give cool stuff that's sort of a separate track than the Raiders box?
Okay.
And that way we could have the Raiders box not uh, have that sort of how do we fit everything that we want to do, but then not, you know what I mean? It was like, can we go over here and have this piece of it for those folks?
And speaking of Sterling, that was another question I was going to ask. How did that whole event come in to mind? Like, was that always the plan, or was that just kind of like, you know what we should do because we're at the anniversary and we could do this and this would work great?
It did kind of come later than everything else because
Okay.
everything else we knew, like we knew we wanted to make a new dungeon, for example. We were like, man, people have played the 10th to death. We want to bring something new. We also got really good feedback about how when they were playing the 10th, even though we changed things a little bit every year, those changes were small enough that you still kind of felt like you were just always playing the exact same dungeon every single time. And it got kind of dry after a couple of years. You feel like you've turned over every stone.
Right.
So we're like, we're going to make a new dungeon, or we're going to try some stuff to make it like have a little bit more variety to it. And so that part of the plan was all set. And then we were like, okay, and we need to have a cool cloak because everybody loved the cool anniversary cloaks. So we'll do another really cool cloak. And they're like, okay, and we're going to do a Raiders Reward box because everybody loves Raiders Reward box. And we kind of said we were going to do Raiders Reward box someday again if we made it to 20. So Raiders Reward box. And then the last part of it was we were like, okay, all of that sounds fun, but it's the 20th. We still feel like
Right.
we want to like do something even
We
more.
have to do something cool,
Um,
right? Yeah.
Something else. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was when we started talking through this concept of, we had all these mysterious remnants in the world, not just the ones that, players have been collecting them over time, but also from like a story standpoint, these things are all over the world. The players have like, gone through this whole big story arc with the codex over the years.
Yep.
And we were like, but we kind of have this weird loose thread of these codex bits laying around everywhere because they're infinite. So we were like, what if we have something where Fred is helping to try to pool these bits up so that they're no longer just all over the place. And the heroes of our game are the perfect vehicle to crowdsource gathering infinite remnants.
There you go. Yeah.
And so then the idea sort of built from there.
And then how did you come up with that reward list? I know you kind of touched on it a little bit ago when you talked about the Raiders boxes. That kind of did you kind of just like you said kind of went from what you couldn't really do in that, but what you could probably do, and then it just kind of worked out.
Yeah, we sort of thought about what's something that's like really like cool that you'd be really excited to get. And we're like, okay, and then we also want something that's like, well, even if you didn't get the most exciting thing, you'd still be really happy. And then we were like, and also what's some areas of the game that's not necessarily rating that has some amount of rarity and difficulty to get unless you play a lot. We're like, can we make the Mimics rewards cover some of those aspects of play where you're like,
Okay.
oh,
Yeah.
now I can choose what I'm buffing, or oh, no, I get to pick which tome I'm going to get. And the fact that you're turning in your remnants for it, and we sort of control like how much you can do that, it makes it very easy for us to do that in a controlled way that's still fun. And it seems like people are having fun with it. And we also liked the opportunity to introduce a little bit of we like Fred. Fred's been with us since the beginning of the game, essentially,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we liked the opportunity to give Fred more of a role besides just the one or two times that people have seen him in the context of feat swaps and in the Sharn quest, or I should say the quest in the university.
And then not really kind of related to the 20th anniversary, but since you did this event, would you are you going to look at the feedback and look at how this event goes over and maybe in the future do something similar to this but different because like the tech would work with it?
Yeah, well, we'll see. That's what we kind of want to watch is like how does
Yeah.
it play out? Especially because with Sterling's Remnant Rush, that's the part of the anniversary that lasts all year long. A lot of the stuff that's happening is sort of what everyone's used to. You get that whole month
Yeah.
of birthday activity. But with the Sterling event, we're like, we want this to kind of keep going. We noticed people had fun having something to look forward to every month. And in Sterling's case, at the top of the month, you're like, oh, his costs reset. It's time for me to go see what I can get. And so we want to see how that plays out, and if people really like that, then and it's we know how to do it now, so we may do it in other ways. The actual birthday area where he's at, that part will go away the same as what Night Revels does,
Okay. Yep.
but Sterling will remain in the Hall of Heroes, so you can still come and
Okay.
talk to him throughout the year.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the anniversary island next. How did the whole idea of that come about to this year kind of separate it off of House P and put it in its own little area? And then I was going to ask if that was going to be permanent or kind of like Night Rebels, it's going to come and go.
We started off with as we started pulling in all these different birthday activities, we started to have difficulty explaining to people where all they needed to go in order to participate in them.
Right.
And then we were like, well, what if we just put them all in this location? And then as we looked at sort of the physical real estate we have to work with there, we're like, yeah, but then if we want to do other birthday stuff in the future, do we just keep piling in this
Okay.
already
Yep.
kind of crowded zone?
Right.
So we're like, you know what? What if we actually just make this much more here? It has its own place, and everybody knows that this is the place you go when the party happens, no matter what the context is. And it gave us a lot more freedom to add more anniversary and birthday celebratory elements because the House Viarlan zone, yeah, it's like the theater zone in terms of character lore, but it has its own stories going on, and then it kind of got weird to like over decorate it for a birthday when it's really kind of not like meant for that.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas in this area, we can really deck it out with whatever we want and not really interfere with any storytelling or sort of sense of the space that way.
Yeah, well, like you said, that does make sense because that way it's like its own thing, and you can basically do whatever you want. You don't have to keep like kind of in the lore of okay, House Fiarlan is this, and this is what is
Yep.
happening in there, and it's just like all of a sudden one day these people just take over. So yeah, that
Yeah.
makes total sense. Was
Yeah, they give
the
us opportunities for like flavor text, right? If you're
okay?
walking
Yeah,
around and talking to the guests at the party, that they're actually like, "Oh man, I'm at a party," and da 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 da. da. It was harder to do that in Feral and have it still make sense.
right. And then the anniversary quest, you said that the 10th one is still there, but you did make some slight changes to it. The one question that I have from what you had said about that, what the heck is evergreen?
Sure.
I've been trying to
So
figure that out ever since you said that because you're like the Cordovan
it's
fight has been changed to make it more evergreen, and I'm like, what does that mean?
it's got two sides to
Okay.
it. One is that it's a reference to the fact that that used to be one of the fights we would change every single year. And we would always
Yep.
change it to be sort of in alignment with what some of the recent creatures that year had been. And it actually takes a significant amount of work to rework an encounter like that in terms of the
Okay.
implementation. And so since our focus is now shifting to the 20-year dungeon, we were like, okay, we need to set this fight up in such a way that we don't need to come in and hand change it every time. And so part of it was okay. Let's make this make sense because if we left it the way it was still referencing. It was making references from like 2019 that kind of wouldn't have held up over
Oh,
time.
okay. Okay.
So it was going in and kind of cleaning some of those bits up so that no matter what year you're experiencing it in, it will still feel like yes, it's a cool anniversary Cordovan fight, but it also isn't so time specific that you don't get the joke.
Right.
The second piece of it is one of the sets of monsters that it has is they're plants, and so I like saying evergreen because it's kind of a nod to Cordovan who likes vegetables. So I
I
was like,
okay.
it's evergreen.
I kind of thought that was a little bit of it. It was kind of like a tongue-in-cheek thing too, but that makes total
Yeah.
sense. And speaking of that whole dungeon, is it hard for you guys to kind of break that fourth wall that way and like design quests like that where you know it's not your standard quest and you can kind of go off the rails a little bit and there's so many like in jokes in there and then you go down with the skeletons and that's all like the past devs and stuff too, which is like amazing. That's another just an in joke. So how hard is that for you guys to do and like kind of break that wall and just have fun with that, or does that come pretty easy?
For us, that comes pretty easy. It's more like making sure that we're doing it in the appropriate time and place. There are all kinds of interesting little Easter eggs. Not all of them are super obvious. One of the not super obvious ones, for example, is if you've ever seen the projection in there's a scene where you're in the Hall of sort of Illusions, and one of the figures is a pig. And it's because in the very, very early days of DDO, like I want to say alpha even, maybe even pre-alpha, one of the first tutorial quests they tried was that you were trying to protect this pig from some kobolds. And at the end of the quest, you let the person know that you've protected their pig and that they're safe, and the reward that you're given is a tasty ham. And so it sort of implies that you saved the pig became the ham.
Right. Right.
And so they were like, well, let's not go with that as the first quest. But the asset of the pig still exists in the file tree.
Right. Okay.
And so at some point, they snuck that pig into one of the illusionary projections. And so a lot of players have passed that pig, who knows how many times, and
Oh,
they're just like, I don't know, it's a pig.
I always thought that too. I'm like, that's weird. They have a pig in there, but okay,
Like,
whatever.
that's weird.
But
There's a
yeah,
pig, and I've never seen
exactly,
a pig in any
exactly.
of the
Yeah.
dungeons. Why is it? And that's why that's there.
Okay.
And so sometimes we're very subtle and you really wouldn't get it unless we came and told you in an encounter like this.
Right.
And other times in that dungeon, we can be a little bit more direct and, make some jokes that are just like very specific, like in some of the treasure or in dialogue that the characters say. So we don't have a hard time coming up with the stuff, and it's more about deciding, okay, sometimes if we try to add a joke, make sure that it's not so in somebody's face. If it's like this dungeon, there's a lot of fourth wall, but you're sort of framed that way when you first go in. Like the entire experience is telling you over and over that this is fourth wall, this is fourth wall.
Right.
But in many other places of the game, we're trying to be real careful about the fourth wall
Right.
because you want a person to react that it's funny, not that it's demeaning to like the adventure and the heroic stuff that you're doing. But that's the
Right.
balance, is like,
Right.
where can you inject that little Easter eggy nod without disrupting the adventure?
Right, right. Well, and that's I think that's a perfect dungeon to do it too. It's just I mean the way you guys set it up is perfect for that, and then you can like you said go and change it if you would like, or keep it the
Yep.
same or do whatever. Well, just real quick before we talk about some of the other fun stuff that's upcoming, that not sure how much I'm going to get out of you, but I'm going to try. The new dungeon that you came out with, what was kind of the thought process of that? Was that just like a nod to, hey, this is 20 years, let's dig back in history and maybe show some stuff and let people re-experience in that, or maybe experience some of that for the first time, maybe if you're a newer player, some of that you might not know.
So we knew that we wanted to do a 20th dungeon and that it had to hold up for a long time. And the obvious answer when you want to do that is, well, then it needs to have a way that something changes every time you go in so that you have a little bit of variety when you repeat it.
Right.
So then we had to talk through, okay, how do we accomplish that? Do we want it to be just certain choices are different, and so, so, so. And then we talked through, we were like, well, what if we built fights and we sort of revisited classic fights? Because that's something that the 10th anniversary dungeon, it does it in like a couple of spots, like seeing Militia or seeing Jeets, but it doesn't heavily sort of go through the stories of DDO. So we were like, this one gives us a chance to actually like revisit some of the really classic stories of the game. And then as we started talking through that, we're like, okay, well, what's the wrapper for that? Do we want that to just be completely fourth wall, and this is the totally fourth wall dungeon that you go in, and instead of it being about developers, this one's about stories? But somebody actually had an idea of, you know what, we could actually make this a more serious story. Like, even though you're going to see a lot of things that you're like, wow, that's not what I expected, or I don't remember that happening, that it's actually part of the story.
Okay.
And it also makes it very expandable because we can always come back and take other encounters and lace those in the coming years. Um, but the quarry are one of my favorite enemies in D&D. Like, just of all D&D settings, I'm a huge Eberron fan, but I've really always enjoyed the quarry. Just that concept of like these like nightmare creatures and what it means to be able to jump from body to body and what kind of trouble you
Right.
could
Yeah.
cause by doing that,
Oh yeah.
and the manipulation and just the whole 9 yards. I love it. So that to me, I was like, yep, I'm sold. We're doing this.
So how did you, was it like a group effort then to pick like the throwbacks that you're doing in that dungeon, or did everybody just
Yeah.
come up with like a list, like here's my five that I would like or what have you, and then you're like, okay, yeah, let's do this one, and that one. Is that how that worked, or?
Sort of. We started off with, okay, what do we think are the story beats that people kind of really remember? We kind of started there, and then we're like, okay, what moments kind of capture those beats? And then, okay, how are the fights set up in that moment? Is it very
Right.
difficult to rip up and then sit down at a new location? Does it have a lot of really custom scripts, or they're going to be a real beast to try to configure? And then the very last part is, and what's the twist? How would we twist this? In fact, some of the encounters that have made it out in the process of testing them, I think I must have seen like 5 different flavors of the laughing knives. So I was like I would come through, I would try it, and then I would look later and try it again, and I'm like, wait, wasn't there a zombie invasion last time? What
wait,
happened to the zombie
wait a
invasion?
minute, where's the zombies? What's going on here? But
Yeah.
and I think that's what
Um,
makes that dungeon very special too, and because like you said, you can rerun it, and it's not going to
yeah.
be the same. I mean, I'm sure eventually it might if you would run it enough, but I I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm sure you guys figured out the math behind that. Like, how many times would you have to run this to get the same triggers all the time, or which is probably
Yeah.
a lot, I
Even
would
us,
think.
it's a lot. Like, there's a couple of encounters that I found that in repetition, I was like, oh no, I've never had this one before that one. And then this third one, I haven't seen as much at all.
Right.
There was a scene with Brawn Pits, and I wanted to go in and specifically look at that scene. And there's like cheaty administrative tools I can do that.
Right.
But I was like, I don't want to configure my client to do that. I'm just going to do it the real way and play the quest, right? And man, I like had to try and try and try, and I was like, "Where are the prawn pits? I'm looking for you.
I know you're in here.
I know you're in here."
So let's move forward to spring. We're having the deck of many things, which I must applaud you. That is very brave to try to bring the deck of many things in, because it's a very bold move. Because if you're familiar with what that is in pen and paper, that has been famously known to wreck campaigns and to end campaigns and quests. So how in the world are you going to do that and keep the same energy of the deck in DDO?
Well, the vehicle that it's coming in, it's one of those big time artifacts, right? And so the vehicle that players will be meeting this deck is through another powerful set of beings, which are dragons. If anybody is going to be able to handle themselves around a deck of many things, it's going to be dragons. And I don't want to get too heavy into the story for
Right.
spoiling it, but essentially that is your sort of window into this artifact, is you're interacting with these dragons.
But yeah, how did that come about? Like, has that something you've always wanted to do, or did somebody just kind of randomly say we should do the deck of many things, and you're like, let's do
We have had the deck of many things as a subject matter on our radar for a while. I mean, pretty much any of the really big, cool D&D iconic things. We're like, how can we get this in here?
it?
And so the deck of many things, we'd been sort of biding our time because we were like, when is the right time? Is it now? No, because we want to do this other thing over here for. Okay, what about now? No, we got this other story that we want that story to get wrapped first. The big part of it is we needed the codex to kind of be out of the way, right? It's such a powerful artifact and sort of all everywhere.
Right.
So we needed to wrap that before we started pulling in another big, powerful artifact. And with this, we knew that we also wanted to have another big dragon storyline before we start heading to the abyss. Because one of the things we'd gotten some feedback over the years was there's like this delicate balance between having like an arcing story but then having too much of that arcing story where it just kind of seems like it just goes and goes and goes, because our game isn't as linear as a lot of games, and so you kind of come to appreciate that non-linearness. And so when we started trying to do something that was very like it's the thing again and again and again and again, it was like, oh my god, I'm so tired of the thing.
Not that
So
thing
that's what we
again.
sort of, yeah, not this again, right? There's one of my favorite memes that somebody made was it's the meme of the person opening the chest and it says, "At last I found the treasure," and then they read it and it's like it's another codex page and they're like, and I'm like, that's what you don't want, right?
Right. Right.
And so we're like, what we want to start doing now instead is giving people sort of intermissions from stories. Like we might be following a storyline, but then we kind of give you a break and introduce a different problem, and then we'll come back to the other problem that keeping your eye on. But the idea is that we'll be able to sort of flow in and out of different problem stories because people have the choice of what packs and things they're choosing to play.
Right.
And it made more sense to have that kind of work that way, where you can kind of choose to dip in and out of which I'll call them campaigns for want of a better term. But if you're following the Abyss plot line, but you're kind of getting bored of the Abyss, you can, okay, I'm going to switch tracks and kind of look at what's going on with the deck of many things.
And then, since you were talking about the abyss, let's talk about that. That's the next. Coming up in the summer. That's another big. We'll talk about why I think that's big for more than one reason. But I think the big thing on people's mind are we're going to level 36. So that is a jump in power a lot, and that's going to mean gear, and that's going to be the
Mhm.
end game Tetris that we all love to talk about, and there's lots of talk on the forums about that. That's all I'll say. So the gear from levels 32 to 34, how are you going to keep that relevant to level 36? Are you looking at like a complete gear reset, or do you know how you're going to handle that?
I believe the best way to describe what's going to happen is that there is, let's see, what can I describe here? I try to think of like, how do I talk
Right.
about this without talking about what I
Mm-hmm.
don't yet want to talk about?
Which is
Um,
fair. I knew it was going to be
well,
hard
okay,
for you.
yeah, yeah. No, I think I can do this
Okay.
because in the producer's letter, we had already mentioned the fact, or I should say, shortly right after the producer's letter, we mentioned the fact that we're going to be revisiting crafting.
Mm-hmm.
What that means is when we're revisiting crafting, our plan is not to just take the crafting and like increase the level. We also want to add a little special sauce to that and how that interacts with the other gear economies. And so we're sort of looking at how do all of these different pieces, compete or commingle. And so that's going to be a huge factor in the gearing. Is that introduction of that system sort of coming in and touching a couple of areas of treasure systems.
Okay.
Um, so that I think that's going to kind of throw a curveball for some folks because they're sort of used to gearing in a very certain way. And now this crafting element is going to come in, and whether that's you crafting directly or the trades that you're making with other people, or like you're suddenly going to have a different axis to be making decisions on is the goal.
Okay.
And that should keep people pretty busy for that level range. And our goal is to make sure that like say level 32, level 44 range treasure, you still actually kind of care about that in the whole ecosystem.
Okay. Yep.
So that's the goal.
That's what I figured you were gonna. I didn't figure it was just gonna be like, oh, we're 36, you're 32. Crap, throw that away. Nobody wants that. I
Yeah,
didn't.
yeah, yeah.
I didn't figure
Yeah.
that's what you were gonna do, but I just didn't know how you were gonna try to balance that out. But it sounds like you do have a lot of ideas, and you have plenty of time to work that out too. So, well, as why we're talking about it. Speaking of level 32, reincarnations coming. So we gonna get the level 36 reincarnation? Maybe.
So I don't believe that legendary reincarnation will happen this year, but we are talking about the point in time when we introduce
Okay.
it because we know that we introduced epic reincarnation before we had actually reached the max in that range,
Right.
and we're like, do we want to do that again? So that's the dynamics that we're talking through
Okay.
right now, is like looking at the way that it played out before. Did we actually like what happened there, or did it get awkward and there's things we want to change
Right.
about it? Those are all the different things we're talking through. And
Right.
also it was a little bit of a different dynamic with destinies back then, and just a lot to kind of dig through. So my guess is that we probably won't see it, but if you suddenly find yourself in an expansion and then it shows up, you'll know why.
Right.
Because we sorted it all out and we were like, yes, full steam ahead.
Yeah, you figured it out. This is how we're doing it. We're going for it right now. So let's talk about Out of the Abyss a little bit, like as much as you can. I realize there's a lot of this you're not going to be able to talk about, but uh, how in the world did that come about, and what are you thinking bringing the Demigorgon in? That's
We
kind.
like to look at there's two sort of angles that we think about when we're choosing, what kind of content we're going to. One is we love bringing D&D books to life, whether they're the really, really like, early original modules, or whether they're some of the more contemporary ones that fifth edition players might be familiar with. So that's one thought process. And a second thought process is, where do we want to go? What kinds of stories can we tell in those locations? And we had made ourselves a wish list, and we've been working through our wish list. And we've talked to players about like, where are some cool places that you are interested in. And so we've talked about like, do you want to go to the astral plane? Do you want to go here? Do you want to go there? And so sort of folding all that information together and looking at where are we interested in going? What do we have excitement to make? And what is a cool module that we haven't done yet? And so those two things sort of came together. We
Okay.
looked at the latter half of that book, and we were like, "Ooh, demon lords busting into the Underdark, you say?" So we were like, "Yeah, let's go there," because we haven't really gotten to do a lot in the Underdark,
Right.
and that's
No.
another one of
Yeah.
those really like fundamental D&D places. And we were like, this would be perfect. This gives us a chance to go back in and do more Underdark stuff with people, and maybe change some things about stuff that we didn't quite like about the original execution, kind of massage some things, and it'll be fun.
And that kind of leads into another question. People in the forums have been talking a lot. Uh, is this going to lead to maybe a revamp, little touching up of the Underdark, some of the Shadowfell conspiracy stuff? You can maybe go back and revisit that.
it's more likely for us to do some touch-ups in the Menace of the Underdark chain, less so the Shadowfell, just kind of based on where people are working in the file trees and
Right.
such. Like one of the things we're looking at right now is the sort of the biome of the Underdark. We kind of want it to have a little bit more light, and not like sunlight. I mean, just like
Right. Yeah.
luminescence and like it's more that like you don't just look into the distance and see like a gray stalactite, like yes, it's the Underdark,
Yeah.
but we actually want you to kind of have like more visual kind of
Okay.
like the feeling like you get when you go through areas like King's Forest or some of these other places where as you're moving to different pieces of that environment, you kind of feel the difference in different parts of it. Or like Manectorin, you feel a big difference going from the
Oh
very
yeah.
sandy part of Manectorin to like the caverns and canyons. And so we want to introduce more of that into the Underdark experience, because right now
Okay.
that kind of feels a little samey unless you're in the actual Drow cities.
Yeah.
So that's what we're hoping for, is to kind of liven that up some more.
And then Dugar is coming as well. So how did you come up with Dugar, and how are you going to try to distinguish them from the other dwarves?
So we were looking at what are some we've obviously done a lot of work in the elf side of the fence. We've done many different, we've done wood elf, we've done eladrins, and we're like, okay, now let's pick a different character heritage to focus on. So we were like, what if we focus on the dwarf? Because our dwarves are sort of like the original, beginning of the game dwarves.
Right. Yeah.
And even the gnomes have a secondary gnome. They've got the deep gnome. So it's like, why don't dwarves get some love? So that was sort of the starting place. Is like, what's one that hasn't gotten a little love yet? And so we were like, and we were also trying to find the Venn diagram between what's something we want to give some love and what lives in the Underdark.
Okay. Okay.
And so
Yeah.
this kind of became the natural fit. And then we kind of talked about, okay, what makes them, different from the dwarves we have? And we started talking about some of the style things that we think we can do. And then looking through the books, we technically already had them as a monster, but that implementation doesn't really stand out very much. Like you do see them do their little enlarge thing over
That's
in
yeah.
Ataraxias.
Yeah.
You see them do their little enlarge, but then the rest of the time kind of just feels like a normal dwarf. And so we're like, okay, let's revisit this and see what we can do. Now they're still in the throes of doing that work of looking at how do we make this feel cooler than just, why would I be this instead of
Right.
just the standard dwarf? And that's the stuff we're working through right now.
And then I assume you're going to try to work in that. You had mentioned that in large. That's like one of the major things about a Dugar. So is that something that
Mhm.
we're going to be able to do? Hopefully, you're going to try to work that in somehow.
We're going to try to work that in. I can't yet promise the specific way that we'll work it, but that
Right.
is on the radar. I think it's very possible because we have other abilities already that allow people to sort of embiggen themselves in other ways.
Okay.
So I don't think it's off the table to actually do that. But what it means for you, like in terms of your build, I don't yet have that
Right.
information
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah. And then just gonna throw this out there. You can tell me to move on if you want, but an iconic of a Dugar? Yes?
There
No?
will be an iconic, but I'm not
Okay.
ready to say what kind yet.
Okay. But everybody kind of assumed there was going to be an iconic because I mean, you would probably swing and a miss if you didn't do an iconic, I think, for one, because there's a lot of possibilities you could do with that. I can think of a couple off the top of my head, but
Exactly. Yeah, that was the big thing we were talking through. Like, okay, we know we want an iconic. It was sort of like we could make the iconic go in this direction or this direction, just kind of based on early looks at what we were doing with it.
right,
And so there was a kind of a back and forth about what kind of iconic. So that's the second reason I don't want to tell you, is I think they're
right,
still
yeah, no,
fighting that out.
right. Let's talk about Arcane Trickster a little bit. That just released as well as part of the anniversary celebration. How did you guys go about creating that and trying to get that mix of that rogue and caster and not making one side feel better than the other?
Arcane Trickster has been on the radar. That's one of Torque's favorite things, and a lot of people love Arcane Trickster just as a concept.
Yeah,
We all, each of us, have our pet like thing that we want. in terms of like D&D, like memories and favorites. And for Torque,
Right.
it's Arcane Trickster. And for the longest time, it was like, well, a huge part of Arcane Trickster would be the mage hand. What exactly would we do? Could we even do that? And so for the longest time, it was like, how are we going to do the hand? But now we're at a point where we're like, oh no, we can do the hand. Like, look at all the ways we can do the hand. We're like, wow, we really think we could do this. And so the initial challenge of doing it, some of the early feedback on it, um, people aren't used to playing hybrids. Like
Okay.
people
Yep.
kind of tend to be a little bit more specialized. Um, I notice it a lot because I love to play hybrids. So whenever there's a hybrid that's not really well suited to the group, it stands out in my hybrid builds. And so we kind of did the first pass at it. And at first, people were a little confused about, like, what's my role here? Am I this or am I that? And it's like, whoa, why not both?
Right.
So, and then just tuning things so that you got that feel. That's what it really came down to, is just a lot of like tuning and kind of looking at places where things either weren't making sense or it wasn't coming across the way it was meant, and people weren't building with it in the way that we were trying. And I think the place we landed in after a few rounds of feedback with folks, I feel like it's in a good place now, and I'm really excited to see what kind of builds people come up with.
Yeah, I am too, because that is one thing about this community. Like, you give them something new, and they're like, "This is what you do. You take this, you take this,
Yes.
you add a little of this, and there you go." So yeah, I
Yeah.
can't wait to see that either. And you did kind of what you have done in the past. It's free during the anniversary event. Then after that, it's going to be free to VIP, and then it'll be in the store. Can we like pretty much assume that's going to be the status going forward for all new things and archetypes?
Not always. There are definitely going to be times where the archetype will be free to VIP, but it's not just everybody gets it for free.
Okay.
The stars just happen to align this time. Like archetypes are a really fun thing to bring out at birthday time, but you might see us do times where an archetype comes out, just launches into the store during a release, or you might see times where it's folded into some kind of expansion if it's thematically, like if it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Um, so so this is a way that archetypes show up, but it won't always be the way that they show
Okay.
up.
Okay. And then this brought up kind of something in the forums that had been at the forefront for a while, but that is the caster pass. Is that coming? Because a lot of people feel like casters are kind of struggling in high reapers and melee is better. And since you brought out like a hybrid melee caster class, now people are saying, okay, let's get some balance going here for just plain casters. So is that kind of on the radar? Have you guys talked about that internally at all?
It's on the radar, and our expectation is that we're probably going to have to do it in chunks. It's probably not going to be one big update. You're going to
Okay.
see us start whittling down the mountain, as it were.
Yeah.
That's my expectation of how it'll likely play out. Like they're currently talking. It's one of those things where we have a lot of different angles to approach, and we're like, okay, which one do we want to do? How complex is this one to test? Will this be at a time when we're juggling this other very complex thing? And so we're trying to line up where we want to attack it, and it's highly likely to play out in, multiple releases and patches over time
And then you
within the
mentioned,
calendar year. Like I
okay,
mean, obviously it's not going to
right,
it's not going to be like, oh my God, we've solved it by December 31st. But the intent
right.
is to be making progress this year.
Okay. Okay, so that's something to look forward to. We'll just say that. You also mentioned that Drow is getting a fidelity pass. Was that kind of always on the radar? Did that just kind of come about because, oh hey, we're going back in the Underdark? Drow hasn't really been touched for a while, so maybe let's take a look at Drow and see what we can do and kind of just mash it into the Abyss expansion as well.
Yeah, so we have for a while wanted to do Drow, but then we realized that people were getting a little fatigued of elves. They're like, I've already had, so many servings of elf. A Drow is yet another elf. So we wanted to kind of change gears, but then we're like, oh, but we also do want to like come through and do a fidelity pass on Drow. We were like, well, we could try to do it with this expansion. We're like, yeah, but they're so tired of elves. Like, I don't want to just put yet another elf in the expansion. So we're like, well, what if we do it within the same year? that we're going to the
Okay.
Underdark. So
Yeah.
thematically, it's still in the
Yeah.
neighborhood, but it's also kind of on its own time. Because the other trick was when you revisit an existing kind of character option, for everybody that already had it and was happy with it, they're like, well, what does this do for me? And so it was like, we need to find a time to introduce this change at a time where we're able to do other things so that everybody who's like, yeah, I'm good with my drow, you don't need to touch me, they have something else that they can be doing.
Okay. And then is this going to eventually maybe lead to enhancement tree work on the drow? Because I personally,
We're talking
I
about
play a
whether
lot of
we
drow, so
want to
I
do
would
the
love
tree
that.
or
Okay.
yeah, we've talked about like, do we want to? It's mostly meant to be an art approach,
That's
but we're talking about whether or not we want to also fold in some tree work or some statting work. And I think we probably won't know the answer to that until a little deeper in the year when we
okay.
see if we have the wiggle room to fit it.
Okay. But that is something that, again, is on the radar. You've been talking about it, and maybe if it doesn't happen now, it's not to say it's going to happen in the future at some point then. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Let's talk about some fun stuff like the 64-bit
sure.
servers. Those, were a little rocky at first, but we're working through all that. And as you said in the producer's letter, and you have that nice little graph that we're in a pretty good place right now with that. How do you feel about just overall this 64-bit servers? How you guys feeling about them?
I'm really loving it. I'll tell you an interesting story that's happening around us while you and I are talking. Um, in the past, when players would come to us with a performance issue and they said, "Hey, the performance on, this server or at this time was really bad, and here's, all the information I have," and we would take that information, we'd look at it, and we go, "Okay, let us try to decode what is happening here. Why is this bad? What's going on?" And just could not figure it out. We're like, we know there's something wrong here, but we can't figure out what the culprit is. So,
Right.
gosh, what do we do? Now, having done all the work that we did, having eliminated as many problems as we have, and introduced better tooling for ourselves, this week people started having trouble on their airships. And in one night, we were able to go in and look and go, oh, it's that. Okay, put a fix in Friday. Like that was just unheard of. That was not something we could ever have done
Okay.
a few years ago. So being able to like now, when something is going wrong, it really stands out like a sore thumb. It's very clear which parts of the system are the ones that are in
Okay.
distress, and immediately be able to think of, okay, what are some things we can do to start mitigating this or changing this or reworking it so it's more performant. So I'm really happy with how the work on 64 and the work on performance in general has been going. We're just in such a different place now.
And then I know a lot of people are always asking 64-bit to 64-bit transfers. They coming at some point soon?
So it's still on the radar. The soonness is still kind of in question. So one of the
Right.
complexities that we've hit is that we had some cases that certain people couldn't get off the 32-bit worlds. So we applied some changes under the hood to let those characters escape.
Okay.
But then the problem is now I have to make sure that the thing we did to help those folks get across doesn't break everybody that tries to go between the 64s. That's what we have to find a way to both
Right.
continue to allow the people that are on the ghost worlds to continue to keep coming across without these folks also not being able to go back and forth between the 64s. So that's the strategies that we're currently working through.
And one of the fun things with the 64-bit servers has been the European server. We
Yeah.
haven't had one of those for a while since like the Codemaster days. So,
Mhm.
how you feeling about that? And maybe any plans to add another one at some point, or you think one's enough for now?
We're watching it. The one that we have has been pretty robust. It hasn't yet hit like a point where we feel the need to do a second one right off the bat.
Okay.
But we're always monitoring to see, because the risk when you do another server is you're sort of dividing the population, and so the more you divide, then everybody who's on the other population doesn't get to interact, and
Right.
it sort of you don't get that nice mesh of people forming groups. And just, you look at how people are right now. When we went from, the 8 worlds and condensed down to the 4, now everybody is able to do all their matchmaking that they need to do to form their raids, to
Oh yeah,
form their
yeah.
guilds. And so it's like, man, we have to be real careful. We really have to need it before you want to add another thing, because we don't have the technology right now to let people sort of freely move between the two resources,
Right,
essentially.
right. So let's talk about some other fun stuff. You had mentioned we're getting the Zoriat VIP mount coming soon, and you said that was going to be very different. A lot of people are guessing it's the dancing slash flying bed, is what the big guess is. Are you ready to tell me right now? Are we going to ride the furniture for a mount?
Hmm. Let's see. Okay, let me ask you this
Okay,
question.
okay.
If you were wrong, would you be disappointed? If you were right, would you be disappointed?
I think I would be good either way.
You'd be good either way?
I think so. But that
All
would
right.
be cool though. But it's just funny to look in the forums when you first announced that. Overall, that was the major thing everybody said, and then there was some stuff people said
Now,
I didn't even remember, and I'm like, oh yeah, oh yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Now, did people say it because they were excited about that and they were like, "Oh my gosh, that would be so crazy."
It seemed like it, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh,
All right. I will tell you the
okay,
mount, but I won't tell you the cosmetic that goes with the mount.
okay, okay. That's fair.
The mount, the mount is the possessed Zoriat bed.
Okay, that is good to. I mean, okay, we can we can let players take it
And
from
it's
there.
not just like the bed, just like, oh, we just like we actually put some effort into making it look like a
Okay.
cool bed. So I'm excited to use it myself.
I'm excited about that now. Though I was kind of hoping it would be a beholder though, because I would love to ride a beholder. That would be fun
There are
too.
so many monsters we want to let
Oh
people
yeah.
use as mounts.
Oh
Don't
yeah.
worry.
Oh
Think of a
yeah.
classic D&D monster that you want to ride, and it probably is on our punch list of mounts we want to create
I
in the
bet.
future.
I bet I would love to see that because I'm sure there's a list somewhere, and I'd just be like, yes,
We're,
that one, that one,
I,
that one,
I
that
do
one.
know I can say this without giving too much away. One of the mounts that we're planning for the expansion is a monster.
Okay. Okay.
It's a classic D&D monster, and it's a monster you haven't seen before.
Ooh. That has some endless possibilities in because there's quite a few monsters we haven't seen
Mhm.
yet. So,
Yeah.
okay, that's something else to look forward to. Let's talk about VIP loyalty rewards beyond the mounts and all the other fun stuff you get us. What's the discussion been about the VIP rewards and maybe adding some new stuff? I'm sure that's
What
quite
we're
the conversation that you have constantly.
Yeah, what we look for is, the first trick is you have to kind of let the system work for a little bit to then go back and look at which months were the ones that people are like, this one could be a little more fun,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Year 2 was that way. We sort of looked through and we were like, you said a month 8 that this was a little, so we jazzed that up. And so as we go forward, we're going to be looking at sort of the nature of, okay, a person who is at this point in the system has been with us for this long. um, a lot of the effects of the program are the kind of thing that they start small, but then the longer you stick with us, the more and more strong they get. We really like that dynamic because I think that is more reflective of a person's VIP-ness, because the fact that you've been sticking with it, you are functionally getting more of a benefit than the person that just showed up yesterday.
Right. Right.
Right. And that has always been the piece of puzzle I've wanted for that system, was people would be like, I'm a VIP, but when they say that, there's a weight behind it. Like, I am a VIP, like I support the game, and I've been here with you through thick and thin. And for me, that's what VIP means. And a lot of the early programming was just more like, well, yeah, but the person that just signed up for VIP yesterday has the same stuff, right?
Right.
And so now you're like, hey, I'm a 3-year VIP. I get this much more discovery booster. I have this much more, bonus XP, or any of those variables that's accruing because of the fact that you've been a long-time VIP. And I think that's the other part of it that we're kind of watching how people do is initially when they're like, well, okay, that was year 1 and 2. It's once you start getting into those deeper years, how do some of those benefits feel now that you have accrued up?
Right. And I know, like, the big thing everybody's asking about is the gold roll bonuses that you had done for a while. Is that something that you're always thinking about maybe doing again? Or is there like a technical limitation with doing that?
There is a limit. There is a limitation. When we do them, we have to do them in very controlled bursts. We had done some analysis about whether it's a thing that we could just do all the time. The answer is no, but we do still like it for those really controlled, like special times. We actually debated back and forth whether we wanted to do it for the 20th anniversary or not, and we decided we wanted to do other things instead.
Okay.
But so when we do it, expect that it's going to be in those tight bursts.
Okay. Let's talk some kind of narrative and personal questions here. You had mentioned in the producer's letter about an anti-paladin Salimus plot. When are we going to see that? Because that sounds freaking amazing. I want that. That is an amazing storyline.
It's
So
neat, right?
yeah,
We
oh
even
yeah.
had concept. We even had concept art of it. We literally had her anti-paladin outfit. It used to hang in the hallway at the old office back in the day.
No way.
Um, yeah, yeah. At some point, that piece of art I think got auctioned off at a charity at some point. So now I'm not even sure where that piece is, but I remember it. It's up here. Um, some of it came down to the storyline that they had intended to tell with that. We went kind of away from that plot line heavily.
Okay. Okay.
And try to go back now, it's like, okay, will people even know or care about this section of plot? But just the high level concept of do we want to take heroes that people are familiar with that they've sort of lovingly played through different stories with and have a flip. You kind of get a teensy taste of it, but it's not a real taste when you're playing the 20th dungeon. We kind of did
Yeah.
a nod to that, included that intro, the intro grotto. Um, but I still surface it with the story folks to go, we should talk about this again, because I sort of threw that out as like a interesting fun trivia about the game, but like maybe it would be fun to kind of
Oh,
explore that.
yeah, it would. That would be amazing. And that kind of would maybe give you the opportunity, you know how like with Marvel Zombies, they had and Marvel did the whole What If series. So
Yeah, the
may
what ifs.
yeah, is that like something you could maybe introduce into DDO, especially for like maybe a special dungeon like around the anniversary or whatever? Like the what if, this was different. Like this hero really wasn't the
Yeah.
hero you thought they were, or this monster maybe was the good guy and we thought they were the bad guy or
Hmm.
whatever. Is that
Yeah,
something
yeah.
that
That I'm hoping we get to do more of those things. The 20th anniversary dungeon kind of opens the gateway to that kind of storytelling
okay?
for us. This concept that, like, hey, there can be other timelines. This is D&D. There's other timelines. There's other
Right.
universes.
Yeah.
And what does it mean if this event happened instead of that event? Korkaza talks you through a lot of like. It's one of the things I really enjoy about the 20th dungeon is as you're making different choices in it, Korkaza gives you some narrative about what that choice you made means. And so I think that that is the cool place to try to introduce some of those what ifs.
Because I just that would just be amazing, and I'm sure there's other stories you could tell, but I want to see that Salimus plot so bad.
Mhm.
Like I didn't even know that existed until you said that, and
Yeah.
I'm like, put that in the game like right now. Let's do that. So
There's a second cameo of it where we, again, not close enough, but there is in the Mind Flayer invasion quest, there's one where Sleemus gets a little taken over, and that was again we were sort of paying homage
kind
to
of
the
the nod, yeah, a
concept,
little
but
nod
not
to it.
fully
Right,
pulling the trigger on it. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right. Um, yes, make that happen. And everybody knows if you're listen to the show, I'm a huge Ravenloft fan. So my ears perked up when you talked about the
I
event.
see you're dressed for the
Yep, yep,
occasion.
I am. And then you said, "Hey, there's going to be a new Dreadlord, and they're trying to break out of Ravenloft." And I'm like, "Do tell, do tell." So is that just going to be just for the event, or maybe might that lead into a quest pack where we might get some more Ravenloft stuff? As a Ravenloft lover, I would love that.
So like Ravenloft is also a huge favorite on our team. We are always eager to go back to Ravenloft, and even though we are planning to do a Ravenloft style event, we are definitely contemplating. And where do we want to go to Ravenloft next time? So like we love Ravenloft, and we're currently assessing all of the different places and all the different dreadlords, and the assessment of like, okay, if we do this one, how would we do this mechanic? How would we represent that? So yeah, we are constantly looking. This year's trip to Ravenloft, I don't know if they're yet in a place where we've decided if you're going to see any sort of in dungeon activity. Obviously, with Symphony of the Fae, we didn't do as much of that. You got it in the sense that you had the extra
Right.
encounters inside of existing dungeons that sort of were new and different. Whereas when we did the Lantern event the first time, you had that sort of introductory quest that you played, and then we did the event, and then at the end there was the Five Fangs raid. So we're kind of talking through right now, like, okay, in what shape do we want this to play out this time?
Okay.
Does it need a quest? Does it need multiple quests? Does it need quests nested inside of other quests? Does it need a raid? Does it not need a raid? We're sort of going through all of those options based on what we're thinking.
But I just that was like this the anti Salimus thing and the Ravenloft Dreadlord. I was like, okay, tell me more, and then you're like,
Yeah.
oh, more on that later, and I'm like, really, really, that's what you're doing? Okay, I see how it is. All right, I just got a few more questions for you here, and these are
Sure.
just fun, kind of off the wall questions. You talked about in the producer's letter as well. You named your top 9 quest in DDO, and most of those quests have like very specific different things that happen in the quest, like maybe the gravity's different, there's darkness, there's like elemental rooms. Is that like kind of what you're keeping in the back of your mind as you guys are planning out the abyss thing? You're like, hey, we could maybe do something like this because that was fun in that quest, so we could add this and it would make sense for the Underdark. Is that something that you're always look at because you just look at your favorite quest from back then and you're like, we need to do more of that?
I would say that it comes up for all of us. Sometimes we'll introduce a mechanic in a quest, and then later we're like, "Oh yeah, I want to do this mechanic again. It was really fun. We didn't get it." Like a perfect example, Rainbow in the Dark, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get that sort of tight darkness that's like right on top of you. And we actually brought that back in Lamortia. There's a quest where you're walking through the caves, and that light is just really pulled in on you, and you're sort of in the tunnel in the dark. And again, it has that same kind of claustrophobic, ominous feeling.
Right.
And so we're often thinking about like what's a thing that we saw before, we really liked that, can we pull that off again over here, or would it make sense for the story if we did something like that again? Or sometimes we just think of completely new things, and we're like, okay, somebody had a cool idea for this kind of experience, let's bring that and see what people think of that. It's kind of funny because a lot of my favorite, I didn't, I had to kind of, trim the list. And when you're like, okay, what's your favorite quest? Okay, let me tell you 50 different quests. I'm like, okay, that's too many. But these are the ones that sort of constantly float to the top. What floats to the top for me, when a favorite dungeon happens, is it's a dungeon where when I played it with my friends, that I remember how we all reacted to that moment.
Okay.
Like I remember us playing with the random puzzle. I remember what we all said when we had just the one light source and it was all darker when, Sam like ran up to the edge of the pit trap and just threw it like face first into it. Couldn't figure out how to get
All
out. And
right.
I remember Prisons of the Plains, like how we all like deliberated which plane we were going to deal with, but then, next time we were going to do it in a different way. And so it's like the memories I have of playing a dungeon with the other people is kind of what causes the dungeon to like rise to the top for me. Like, did I have a dungeon where everybody that was playing with me felt useful and had fun and had a memorable moment?
Right. And that's, I think, part of the fun of DDO too is just you remember those moments. Like you remember, oh yeah, I remember that one time that we did this, and like somebody just ran in and we had this whole big plan, and then somebody's like, no, I'm just going to go in here and do this. And then like things just all went haywire, and then everybody was laughing, and that's just like the fun of it. And I think a lot of those dungeons kind of added to that with those special like effects that they had, and it was just something that you had to work through. So,
Yeah, yeah.
okay, 2 fastball questions for you. Just
All
gonna
right.
Throw these out there and give me the top of your head answer. What is the
Okay.
one pet project you wanted to put in DDO for years, but you haven't been able to do it? If there was no,
Psionics.
okay, that's I kind of
I
thought,
specifically, very specifically, Kalistar.
okay, I kind of figured because I know that Seb has talked about that a lot.
Hmm.
So
Although sitting in chairs is my other pet project. I have talked with the animator about it, but that's my selfish pet project where I
right,
know that the integrity of the game doesn't rest on me getting chairs in the game.
right.
Whereas psionics, I'm like, dude, psionics,
Yeah, I
psionics
mean
is like my
psionics. I
favorite
mean
thing. Like,
exactly.
that's the first D&D book I ever bought was the second edition psionics book.
And then, what is the one thing you would want a player to know who left in, say, like 2012 to know about the game today?
There are so many things to do. Like, we've added so much stuff. There's so many more worlds we're going to. There's so many, like, coming in and just playing Ravenloft, for example. I'm like, you have to play Ravenloft. Like, oh my gosh, like you have to come see Ravenloft. There's so many things we're able to do now that we weren't able to do back then, or we couldn't figure out how to do back then. You know, just there's so much, and it's like 20 years in. Like, if the last time you saw us was 2012, like, you definitely come back. We're here. You can jump right back in the saddle. That's like one of the great joys of DDO, is that if you've been away for a while, you don't have that problem of everybody else got to the end game and they're like way up there, because everybody's looping through reincarnation. And so if you're level 12, or whatever you were when you left off at the
Right.
game, there's going to be somebody to play with.
Guarantee you, you're going to find somebody in that level, and they'll be like, "Let's go. I'm going to take you to
Yep.
Ravenloft," as you
Exactly. I'm going to
should.
take you to Ravenloft. Exactly. I'm going to take you everywhere. Like, that, you will not be alone. You will not be like, oh, everybody's at the cap and I'm down here. Like, nope, just come and play.
And that is kind of one of the unique things about DDO too, is just that reincarnation loop. Because, like you said, you're always going to have somebody that's going to be in your level range.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I think that is going to be all the time I'm going to take from you tonight. So I appreciate all the
Sure.
time and all your answers, and we look forward to 20 more years of DDO. Right.
Absolutely. That's our goal.
All right. Thank you very much.